right. All right. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Like I said, today we're covering the application process and application processing and approval processes. So there's quite a lot to cover, and this is really going to be important for those of you who kind of are in the trenches with Angel Tree, the ones in there actually taking applications, approving them, and maybe even those of you who will be training volunteers to do some of these processes. This will be important for you to kind of learn all of the aspects of it. What we want to start with today is making sure that we have our applications set up, configured correctly. On our last webinar, we talked about our campaign setup and all of the things that go with setting up the intake sites and the distribution sites and all of those things. But the last part of the campaign setup is related to the application. So I'm actually going to go here back under our campaign admin screen and skip along to the tab that says application. So this is where we are going to configure what does our Angel Tree application look like? What questions are we going to ask our applicants, our clients to complete? And what information are we wanting to collect from them? So this is the setup for that. It's very important that you do go through this. There is a default setting, so if you don't do this, you can technically still open your applications and have those work. However, it is important to know what data you're collecting and make sure that you're getting what you need. And there are a few changes from last year, so definitely, even if you've done this before, we want to make sure to cover this again. So on this application tab, you'll see 3 different radio buttons where it says choose form type. So there are 3 different forms or application forms within Angel Tree, and each of them can be configured differently. For the most part, you do want to try to keep them in sync with each other. If you make a change on one, you want to also make the change on the other, and I'll explain why as we go. But the 3 different types of forms are, the first one is the family applicant intake. So this is your standard intake form. When it is being entered manually on the TSAM side, so if you are doing an interview with a client, for example, so you're not doing online application, but you are just doing an interview style where the person's sitting in front of you and you're keying in the answers to their questions directly into TSAM, that's the family applicant, and there's kind of a little description there. Regular families or seniors, and is entered manually by intake staff. Similarly, I'll skip down to the bottom, Angel Tree Public. So that is your online application. This is the one that if your clients are applying at home online, this is the form that they're going to see. For the most part, you want to keep those 2 things in sync. There's really no reason that you would, or not too many reasons, you would collect different data for each of those, but there are some circumstances where, I'll give you an example on your public application. So when somebody's sitting at home, you may have them enter their driver's license number because you need to be able to verify that when they come and pick up. However, when you're interviewing that person, you may not need to enter that number into the system because you may just look at it because you're sitting there in front of them. So in that case, you may require it on the public form, but not require it on the standard intake form. So it's just an example of one reason those might differ, but for the most part, they are going to be the same. The other type of application is the special care application. This is used for group registrations and is only entered manually. There is no online component for entering special care applications. So we're going to focus on the first and third one there. In fact, I'm just going to go ahead and jump into the Angel Tree Public to give us an idea. So I'm going to select it and I'm going to click Next. What this is going to do is walk me through each of the different form and allow me to collect from each, in this case, point select applicant. You can see here step 1 is applicant So this is all of the information we will be collecting from the applicant. Many of them, because these are recorded different than last year. In some cases, the system requires these fields. We cannot process an applicant if we don't know their name, for example. We can't communicate with them via email if we don't have their email address. So that is a required field on the public application because the system requires that. In addition to that, this year, the Central Territory has added some required fields beyond that in an effort to collect the information that will then ultimately be transported over to SIMS. So in order to make sure, or community services, I think it's called, to make sure that all of that data gets over there and that we have collected all of the information that's needed, we need to require that the applicants enter that information. So last year, you may have had a choice to not include, gender, race, ethnicity, but this year you don't have that choice. Those will be grayed out and you won't be able to uncheck those. So that means you will have to collect that information. Any of the other ones though that are not grayed out, that means you have a choice to decide whether you want to include them in your application process. So this one here, preferred language, for example, if I want to ask that question on my form, on my application form, I would just check the box here under asked. If I want to further require that they include that information, I would check the box that says required. If I don't, it'll still ask the question, but it will be optional for the client to enter. We can't force them to enter that info. But if you want to force them to, if you want to require it, then you would check the required box as well. Okay, so you do have a little bit of flexibility in some of these areas if you want to collect this information or not. So I'm just going to scroll down to the bottom and click next. So that was the applicant information. These are other household members, so other people within the family who are not the head of household, not the angels, but just other people who live within the family. Again, you'll see those grayed out checkboxes, meaning those are required. Unfortunately, you cannot change that. The third step is the budget worksheet. This is where you can collect information on the applicant's household income and things. If you want to turn this budget questionnaire on, you would click the checkbox at the top, the asked box, and then you can choose from within that which specific fields you want to ask. But a lot of locations don't even like to include the budget questionnaire at all. So if you wanted to turn off that step entirely, you would just uncheck the one at the top, and all of that goes away. So that means when your applicant goes through the process, they will totally skip over the step about budget, about the budget worksheet. So if you want to use that, just check the box at the top and then choose which fields within that you want to include. And then if you don't want to, just uncheck the whole thing. I'll go ahead and click next. This is the fourth, I believe the last step is the angel information. This one has some interesting features. Again, you're going to see the grayed out checkboxes. We have to have their first name, last name, date of birth, gender. However, the rest of these are more about their Christmas needs and wishes. So there are a few things here that you may or may not have seen last year. So I want to make sure to point those out. So for every angel, right? So for every child or senior angel that qualifies, they will be asked these questions about their Christmas needs or wishes. Generally, these fields are just open text. These are just open text fields. So the need, for example, I have a need and a wish. This is a pretty common scenario to see. If I have these checked, that means it's going to ask them for a need or a wish, and they actually just type in whatever they want. You know, I want rollerblades, I want a laptop, I want the moon, right? They can type in anything. So that's one option, is just the basic need field, which is a text area. Another option you might want to consider is this custom need, this needs custom list. What that allows you to do is create a list of acceptable answers for the need, the angel's need, and allows you to have them select from that list rather than typing it in an open, kind of an open text field. So if I want to do that, I'll just click here, add values. So I need to give this field a name. We're just going to say, let's just call it need. We'll give it some values here. So maybe they need shoes. some acceptable answers here. If you want to restrict those answers by the angel's age, so maybe the things that a toddler might need might be different than things that a senior might need. So shoes is pretty universal, so I'll just leave that open. Then I'll click add another. We'll say car seat, and maybe we'll say from ages 0 to 4. That option would show up for angels ages 0 to 4, but it wouldn't show up for angels older than that. Okay, so that's the difference there. Maybe bedding, school supplies. Maybe that'll be ages 0 to 14. So we're basically building this custom list that is going to force the applicant to choose from one of those options. Okay, rather than them entering whatever it is they need. Okay, so that is an option if you want to do that. So I'm just going to go ahead and save this. And now that I have some values in there, I can check the box to say ask this question, and I'm going to go ahead and require it as well. I want them to choose something from that list. Okay, so you have that same option. You can create a wish custom list, so it's the same concept, but here you would be adding different wishes that they might have. And we get this question a lot, like, you know, we don't allow people to ask for bikes, or we don't allow them to ask for game systems. This is a way where you can control that, where you can set a pre-selected list that they can choose from, and that just helps make sure that your donors are receiving reasonable requests along the way. It does restrict a little bit what the parents and angels can wish for, but you know, there's probably a balance there, and it's up to you how you want to use that. So just remember that the basic field, need, wish, these are just plain text fields, where the custom lists are going to be a drop down where they are forced to choose from that list. So you can do that same kind of thing for the need and wish. You can also do it for what we call favorite. You can name that, rename that something else if you wanted to. Sometimes it's you know, like my favorite characters, or something along those lines, something that will help the donor know what to choose. But again, you can add your own custom values to that list. And then this year we've also supplied you with a couple of extra custom pick list sections. So you can use these two that say custom pick list 1, custom pick list 2. You can use this for anything. If you want to collect their favorite color, or you want to collect their you know, bicycle size, or whatever it is, you can use those to create your own custom list. So we'll put in here favorite color, and then you can add all the different values that you want. And so then you're creating, again, a custom drop-down list that you can present the applicant to collect whatever information you need. So you can see custom pick list 1, we've called that favorite color, we've added our values, and now we're going to ask that on our form, and maybe even require it if we want to. Okay, so you definitely want to look through this. The default is to collect all of this information for each angel. We find that most units don't want to collect this much information, but over the years we've had lots of different requests. People want to put in things like height and weight, and skirt size and bra size, and I don't know, some people want to collect that information, some don't. So if I don't want to ask it, of course I'm just going to uncheck it. I would probably go with something a little more basic, basic shirt size, these kinds of things. For the ones that are kind of gender specific, for example, bra, skirt, dress, those will only show up for female angels. They won't show up across the board. So you just want to play with it, see what it is you want to include. You want to make in a way you want to make the form simple for the parents to fill out, but also collect enough information that your donor has like a nice shopping list to go off of, right? Because that's going to make them feel like they're really giving the angel what they need. So really just consider which questions you want to ask and which ones you want to require. That last field there, special concerns, that's just used for someone to express, hey, I'm asking for toddler toys for this 8-year-old, which seems weird, but they're, maybe they're developmentally delayed, or maybe there's some special need that they have. So that's a good place to allow the parent to include information like that. That may help the donor and then may help you as well as you're processing the application. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and save this, and we're going to go in and see what this application process actually looks like in a moment, so we can kind of see the evidence of all of those settings we just created. But before we do that, we've got 2 more sections here in our campaign admin to look through. The next one is documents. So this is really only important if you are using online applications. If you're doing a full in-person interview style intake, you do not need to worry about this too much, if at all. But what this does is, because your applicants are applying at home, right? They're sitting at home or they're on their phone somewhere and they're filling out this application. We're not there in person to actually verify that documentation. And we upload that documentation. So instead, we need more staff to upload that to us. We want to forward upload the time to upload these documents required, so that by the time we receive their documents, receive the application, it should by rights have everything it needs that they documents. You can see we already have a couple of them listed here: photo identification, proof of residency. And so these are the types of documents we are asking them to upload. And then you can see here it says required for applicant, angel, or household member. And I can select which of these people I'm requiring this documentation for. So for example, I may only need the photo identification of the applicant. I don't need a photo ID also of every angel or of every household member. No, I just need the photo ID for the applicant. So I'm just going to check the applicant box. If I want to add another document that is going to be required, I'm going to click here, add required document. Check the box here, and maybe we need birth certificates, and we're going to need that for every angel. Okay, so that's how that works. So when the applicant goes through the application process, they will be prompted to upload a photo ID for the applicant, a proof of residency for the applicant, and then a birth certificate for each angel. Okay, that may not be a good example. You know what documentation you're looking for, but that's how you do it. So if I want to remove one of these, I'll just click the red X here to remove, and so now that birth certificate option is gone. Okay. Something you might consider, like what I've done here on proof of residency, I actually went ahead and put in the description there what type of document I'm looking for. Maybe in this case a utility bill, but if you're looking for photo ID, maybe you'll put in there the types of ID that you'll accept, driver's license, passport, and list those out. That's just going to help the applicant know what it is you're looking for when they get to the step of uploading these documents. All right, so this will be pretty self-explanatory when we get to the application process, but I want to make sure you knew how to control what documents the application is going to ask for. This is where you do that. All right, so I'm going to move on to seasonal programs. So this will come into play when we get to the approval process. So it'll be a little bit till we see this, but I do want to point it out because there are some things here that are unique to the Central Territory and new this year. You'll notice that there are several seasonal programs already listed here. These are going to be universal programs. So every unit within the Central Territory should see these seasonal programs, and I'll show you how we use them later. But the concept is, this is a way for me to track additional services or additional programs that this applicant is eligible for or accepted for as we go through the Angel Tree process. Yes, they're applying for Angel Tree right now, but there are other seasonal programs and assistance that they may also be receiving, and this is going to give me a way to track that. Okay, so these are the standard services. These are going to link over to community services, to SIM, and we'll talk about how that's all going to work later. But you may also have your own seasonal programs that you run. So for example, I can come in here and you can see I can't remove any of the current seasonal programs because those are territory-wide. So I can't remove those, but I can add another one. Let's say we're going to do a Thanksgiving food distribution, and while the people are applying for Angel Tree, we will also determine who's eligible for that and go ahead and check this box so that we can get a list. Once our intake process is done, we can get a list of everybody who we have tagged as participating in the Thanksgiving food distribution. So there's lots of different ways you can kind of use that. At the end of the day, it is just a simple way to tag or flag applications to a certain program or group that you want to use. So it's really straightforward. I'll show you when we get to the approval process, but this is where you control what programs are available to add each applicant to. So we'll see how that works here in just a bit. Alrighty, so I'm going to pause for just a moment, and we are actually going to jump over to the application process itself. I think I mentioned, or maybe I didn't, I can't remember, at the beginning of this, there are 2 handouts. You may want to take a look at those. So in the handout section on your webinar controls there are 2 documents. One of them is a copy of an FAQ that we have in our FAQ library that says, how do clients find applications? So this question came up and we wanted to make sure that we covered it so that anybody who was kind of wondering would have this information. So we talked last week about how to actually enable and turn on your online applications, but the question came up, well, okay, I know how to turn it on, but how do the clients actually find it? How do the clients actually get there? So we included this FAQ in our FAQ documents, and then I also attached it as a handout here for you to refer to. But every applicant, no matter where they are, all across the country, all go to one single website to enter their Angel Tree application. So you don't have a unique link that you need to generate or send out to your applicants. There is one single link that everybody across the whole US who's using this program would use for their applicants to apply, and that is saangeltree.org, www.saangeltree.org. So we know where to send them, but the question is, how do we drive them there? And really that's going to be very much up to your community, how you typically communicate, what resources you have. But some examples, some ideas, some things that we've seen over the years. You can send out flyers or mailers, or if you have an email list of previously known clients, you can send that out, and all you would have to do is include that link, saangeltree.org. Okay, you'll send them there, and that will take them through the entire process. If you have a core website that you maintain year-round, you can have whoever your webmaster is, whoever is in charge of updating that website, you could have them add the link as well. You know, click here to apply for Angel Tree, and again, it would just be a link to saangeltree.org. So as long as if you have a website and you have control of it, or you know the webmaster who can update that for you, that's a great option. Another is to maybe give that link out to your community partners. Very often we hear, instead of just kind of opening it up to, you know, the floodgates to the whole world, instead what they like to do is work with community partners like school guidance counselors and other social service agencies who might refer people to your program. And again, all they would need to do is refer them to saangeltree.org. So make sure that they have that. So it is really simple because it's one place to go. Of course, you could also post it to your social media sites. We had this happen a lot over the last couple of years, and I think it's a really good driver because people share those kinds of things. So if you have a core Facebook account, Twitter account, or whatever it is, and you want to post the link, again, all you have to have is a link to saangeltree.org. And send your applicants over that way. Other than that, you know, give it to a radio slot or any kind of advertising that you have. All you need to do is push that single address out there, and that's going to drive the applicants toward your online application portal. Okay, so that question comes up a lot. It's not necessarily something that we at DPI or TSAM kind of can control. It's something that you have to decide how you want to distribute that. But we wanted to make sure you had some ideas of a few options. So once you have distributed that, link out to the world and you start to receive some applications, this is where they will land. I think we talked about this a little bit last week, but this week we'll go all the way through the application process to get an idea what it looks like. So I'm going to scroll down here to the bottom where it says, do you have an invitation code? We talked a lot last week about invitation codes. If you weren't on that one, make sure to go back and watch that section of that webinar, because invitation codes can be very useful and have a lot of different applications, and we kind of went in depth about that. So I won't cover that again here. I'll just go ahead and say, no, I don't have an invitation. And I'm going to go ahead and put in my zip code. Again, referring back to last week's training, this is going to let me through here because in our campaign setup, we have this zip code 60007 enabled for this course intake site. Okay. Again, if you have no idea what I just said or what that means you need to go back and watch last week's training, because that does all need to be set up before we can ever get to this point. Okay, but again, I'll just refer you back to last week and I'll just keep going forward. So I'm going to go ahead and click go. All right, and this is going to walk me through the application process. So this is accessible to your applicants on the web, so they can use their cell phones, they can use their computers, their tablets to sign up. One thing that I saw a couple times last year was in the lobby of your shelter or your core social service building, they actually had a computer set up that had this website pulled up, and they just had people sit down right there in the lobby and complete their application on their own. So even though they were in the building, they were still able to kind of use that kind of self-service to complete their Angel Tree application. So that is another option. But I'm going to go ahead and fill this out. Okay, so if the fields are required, it will not let the applicant move forward without them. So if I tried to skip over all of these required fields and tried to hit next, it won't let me do that. Again, the whole idea here is that we are getting all the information we need the first time, so we're not having to go back and forth with the client. You'll notice the ones that are optional actually say optional, like preferred language. Okay, so I'll go ahead and fill this out. All of these kind of drop down values you see, these are all prescribed by the territory, again, because they match the personal identifying kind of information that we have in SIMS and community services. So it is important that all of that matches. So we've kind of taken care of all of that. Remember that when you are applying online, it does require an email address. You have to have an email address, and that's because this whole process relies on us being able to communicate with the person via email. So if you have families where that's just not possible, they're just not able to apply online because they don't have an email address, you do always have the option to either have them come into the office and you can complete the application for them on the TSAM side, which we'll talk about in a second, or just do it over the phone or whatever the case may be. You do have the ability to do it for them, but if they're applying themselves online, they do need to have an email address. So we're going to put that in. We're going to confirm that. I'm going to give my my address. Oops. The county field here, this is something, I believe this actually was there last year, but just to point this out, based on the zip code that I enter, we do a lookup on National Zip Code Registry, and we know what county or counties that zip code is a part of. So that drop down there for county is limited to only the counties where that zip code is present. So that we can make sure to reliably collect county data, because I know a lot of units like to kind of parse things out by county. So making sure we're collecting that information correctly. And then the zip code, of course, because we already entered the zip code on the first step, that was the first thing we entered when we got here, they can't change that. So that prevents the scenario where, oh, well, I heard from my friend that zip code 6007 works, so I'm going to use that to get me through, but then I'm going to put my own address here and I'm going to change it. It's not going to allow them to do that. Only people who actually live in 6007, in this case, would have been able to get through. Okay, so phone number, and then a referral source option, school counselor, and I'm going to go ahead and click next. So now, because we've entered all of the required information, it is going to let us continue our application. You see a note here, and this is important to kind of understand the flow and what's happening for the applicant. When they complete that first step, we know who they are, we know how to reach them because we got their email address. So they are now kind of officially in the system. Their application is what we call a draft status. If you used Angel Tree over the last couple of years, you'll be familiar with these draft applications. I think we've refined this a lot between last year and this year. So I think it's worth going over this again. But as soon as they complete that first step of the application, they are now officially in the system. They haven't finished their application yet. They haven't submitted it for us to review yet. But if they walk away at this point and go back to work, or forget what they were doing and kind of want to come back later and finish it, at this point, because we know who they are and how to reach them, we have sent them an email, and that's what this notification is telling us. We've sent them an email to say, okay, thank you for starting your application. Here's a link where you can get back to it, so you can go back and finish. Again, because we're trying to prevent the scenario where they go in and just start a brand new one. We want them to finish their existing application, but it will stay in that draft status until they have actually completed it and submitted it for review. So if I go back actually to my TSAM window here, and I go under applicant records, You can see here, these are a list of all the applicants. We'll come back here in just a little bit, but I just wanted to show you that our Fred Flintstone, who we just created, isn't showing in this list. That's because it's still a draft application. So in order to see that, I need to go here. There's a checkbox that says include draft applications. So if I include that in my filter, he should show up. And so that's just going to be helpful. So there he is right there, number 9, Fred Flintstone. So when someone calls you up and says, hey, I'm trying to do my Angel Tree application, and you're searching, but you can't find their name, it is a good idea to maybe check the draft applications as well. And you can see the draft, it says draft status right there. It is helpful because you may be able to help them get back to their application if they lost track or can't submit it for whatever reason, and you need to be able to submit it for them. You can do that. So it's important to know that the drafts are in there for a reason, because you may need to be able to help this person, but they're not going to be there by default, because that would also be a lot of clutter. You have some people who are just in the middle of their application and there's no reason for you to look at it yet. So we don't include them by default, but just make sure that you know that include draft applications checkbox is there. Okay, so helpful tip. All right, so back to our application. It's going to walk me through the rest of this process. This is telling me, based on our campaign setup, that members of my household ages 0 to 20, oh, that's a very generous angel age. And remember, that's a setting that you set up in your campaign admin. It's on the general tab that we covered last week. That's the minimum or the maximum angel age. So that's where that's coming from. So yours doesn't have to be 0 to 20. You can set that to whatever you want. But this is telling me members of my household 0 to 20 or 65 over qualify as angels, but is there anybody else who lives there as well? I'll say yes. And we'll need to provide some information about those people. Again, these are required. And then I can continue to enter as many of those household members as necessary. Okay, but I'll just say no, there's nobody else, and I'll go ahead and click. All right, our next step here is the angel information. So again, this is telling me members of my house between these ages can qualify. If I tried to put an angel in here right now who was not within my age range, it wouldn't let them through. So that prevents people from just submitting angels that are outaged the program. So I'll go ahead and put in. Okay. And then here to show you kind of how that application setting really affected this application. So here's our need field. Because we selected that custom list, it's going to be this drop down. And I can only choose from these options. I can't type in something else that I need. Okay, so that's that custom list, and that's how that appears to the user. Alternatively, for the wish, we didn't use the custom dropdown. We just left that as the basic text field. So here I can put in anything. So I can put in like, right, anything crazy. Hopefully people don't do that, but that is kind of the difference between the custom list versus the basic text field. Okay. My favorite thing is dinos, and I want to wear toddler clothes, and my favorite color is yellow. So again, that's one of the custom pick lists that we created, right? We set up our favorite color, and that's how that shows up here. Okay, so any info you want to collect from the applicant about the angel, you will have configured here, and that's what shows up. So some of these other things are optional, but I'll go ahead and fill them in. And maybe I'll just leave special concerns because that's optional. It's not going to require it. Go ahead and click save. And then of course it allows me to enter more angels. So are there any more angels? If yes, it wants me to provide the same information for the next angel. If no, it'll just let me continue. Okay, so we entered one angel, but you can enter, the applicant can enter as many as they need to. The next section here is the disclaimer and consent. So this is where they give us consent to collect their information. There's information about their privacy, links to the privacy policy, where they can find all of that information. So this is all verbiage that was supplied by the territory. They will agree to the use of the electronic signature. And something that is a little bit unique to Central Territory is this is going to require a signature not only from the client themselves, but also from any of the other household members who are over 18. So because they are also consenting to release their information, they'll have to sign it as well. This is you can do this, sign with your finger if you're on your phone, with your mouse if you're using a computer like I just did. But they'll sign that document agreeing to give their consent for the release of information. Go ahead and click next. And the next step is our documentation. So remember, we went in and set up our required documents. This is where that's going to show up. Okay, so this is telling me that for the primary applicant, I need to have a proof of residency. So I'll just click browse. This will be dependent on the type of device that you're using as to kind of what this process looks like. Of course, like if you're on a smartphone, for example, it will be able to take a picture or search your pictures or search your files on your device. There's kind of different ways that this manifests itself depending on the device that you're on. I happen to be on my laptop here, so I'm just going to choose, and I don't think you can see my file explorer, but I'm just browsing on my machine, and I'm going to find a copy of my utility invoice, and then I'm going to find a copy of my ID and upload that. So it can be photos, it can be in this case those are both PDFs, but can also be photos, and for the most part that's what we see. We see them take pictures of their ID and attach that here. Okay, so the only downside of this is that the system cannot tell what has been uploaded. It can't look into the document and know for sure if it is a valid utility bill, but it will check to make sure that something has been uploaded. Okay, so it won't let them go through if they haven't uploaded something in each of those sections. I'm gonna go ahead and click continues, just confirming the documents that I've uploaded. Go ahead and click submit. Are you sure? Yes, I am. All right, so now this is telling me, thank you for submitting your documents. We'll notify you via email if and when your Angel Tree application is approved. They will also get another email notification saying their application has been submitted. So they know kind of what the status is as they go. So at this point, now our application has been submitted by the client. It's going to move from a status of draft, which we saw before, to a status of what we call pending. So I'm just going to refresh this. Back in the Angel Tree, or excuse me, yeah, back in the TSAM Angel Tree world. Now we are taking back on the role of the core officer, the intake supervisor or volunteer who you have processing applications. And now we're going to talk through, what does that application approval process look like? How do we review it? What all steps might we need to take? And this is going to be important if you're going to be kind of the ones directing the intake process and maybe training your volunteers on how to do this. You really need to kind of think through the different steps and which parties you want to be taking which steps, and how you want to organize yourselves. So I'll walk us through what all of the steps are, and then of course you'll need to determine kind of how you're going to do that with the staff that you have. So, okay, to process applications, the first thing I'm going to do is come here under applicants to applicant records. This is kind of our main jumping off point for anything to do with applicants. This is where we see all of our applicants. You see we have a whole bunch here. I'm going to use the filter in the upper right corner, and I'm going to filter by status because I'm interested in processing the ones that are still pending. Okay, not the ones that are draft that haven't been submitted yet, not the ones that have already been approved, but the ones that are pending. So I'm going to click here on status, and I'm going to filter the list to pending. And here I have a list of all of my applications that are currently pending. So this would be my work list. This is, okay, here are the 8 applications that are ready for me to review today so far. Okay, you can also filter by submitted day and time. So if you want to say, okay, first I'm going to work on the ones that were submitted Tuesday, then I'm going to work on the ones that were submitted Wednesday. You can use this to kind of organize the list whichever way you want. But you'll see here there's the applicant's ID. That's what we'll click to open the record. You'll see their first name, last name, address, number of angels included, their intake location. In this case, we're in Chicago Midwest. And that intake location is determined by what zip code I used. Okay, so remember all the way back to our campaign setup, this particular zip code, 60007, was set up and tied to the Chicago Midwest Christmas Warehouse intake site. And so because of that, my application has been assigned to that particular intake site. Every now and then, something will happen where you have somebody apply with a zip code that ties to a certain intake site, but for whatever reason, you actually want to serve them out of a different intake site. You know, maybe they had just a temporary address, but they're actually living somewhere closer to one of your other intake sites, or they're a member of the Corps, and although they live in a zip code for another area, you actually want to serve them out of the Corps location, you know, whatever the reason is. If you do have multiple intake sites, you would be able to change that here. So this applicant, Mark Smith, ended up at Chicago Midwest, but for whatever reason, we want to override that and send him over to, you know, Chicago Midway. I would be able to do that here. And this list would be made up of any intake sites that I have. In this case, there is only one intake site, so that's why that's like that. Okay, so that's a little tip for you. It does happen from time to time, and it's a question we get a lot, and that's why that drop-down box is there so that you can change that as necessary. So I'm going to go ahead and look for Fred here. I'm going to open up this application. And now we get into the actual processing part of this. So there is a new feature this year. This is brand new. Nobody will have seen this last year, so definitely something to pay attention to. I've talked a little bit about the fact that the ultimate goal here is to run your Angel Tree program, serve all of these people, and then as efficiently and seamlessly and easily as possible, get that data over into community services where you're not having to rekey all of that data over there, because all of our client information needs to end up there eventually, right? So this step is critical to making sure that the data that we collect in Angel Tree ultimately makes its way over to community services and SIMS, okay? So what happens when I open this application is it automatically does a search. It's going over to SIMS, community services, and it is looking to see, does this person exist over there already? If so, we want to create a link between them so that now we can update community services to say we served this family in Angel Tree. If not, we want to create a new record over there in community services so that we can record this new family and the services can be listed, and you can run all of the reports you need and all of that kind of thing out of community services. Okay, so it is critical that we do this step. It does add a little bit of time to the application processing part. So if you used this last year, just know that this is a step that's going to add, a few seconds or a minute or so to each application that you are approving, but it is going to save a ton of time on the back end trying to match up clients between AngelTree and community services. So this is really the best way to do it. It does take a little bit of extra effort, but it's definitely worth it. So what's happened when I opened this application is it said, okay, let me go see if Fred Flintstone exists in community services. Through a link that we have with them, we're able to reach in and see if there are any potential matches for this person. In this case, there's no such person as Fred Flintstone, so it's telling me there are no matches on the community services side. So this is the AngelTree's applicant info. Here's Fred Flintstone, and we don't find anybody that looks like this guy in community services. So that's okay. That's probably going to happen from time to time. It may happen a lot. I'm not exactly sure what the volume is going to look like. But if we're sure that that person doesn't already exist because there's no match, then we're just going to go ahead and say create as a new client. So what that's telling us is, or what that's telling the system is, eventually we'll pass this over to community services and flag it as a new client so that it gets created on that side without anybody having to rekey that in. So that's a fantastic, wonderful, amazing option. And it's going to save, if it's not you, it's going to save somebody up or down the line a lot of time, and make sure that our data is accurate. So that's the scenario where it doesn't match, where you couldn't find a match. One of the other handout that I included here has a little bit more information about this matching process. I've actually got it pulled up here just to give us an idea of what this would look like. So there are some screenshots there that kind of walk you through what this match process looks like. You'll want to read over that, make sure you're fully understanding of that. But in the scenario where we do find potential matches, right, where in this case we've got someone named Bobby Brown, and we found a few Bobby Browns over in community services. Now I can look and see, okay, are any of these people my Bobby Brown? Are any of these people the one I'm looking for? You can see, actually, let me zoom in a bit. You can see that the first option there, this Bobby Brown, has the same address as our applicant. So that's most likely our candidate. So you would click select to see more details on that applicant. Scroll down a little bit, and that will bring up the next screen, which says these are the people in the household. So in AngelTree, we said there's Bobby, Alice, and Johnny, and then community services, there's Bobby, Johnny, and Jerry. So is this the correct family? If you believe that it is the correct family, you would click confirm match. And confirming that match is going to link together that community services ID and this AngelTree ID so that we can update their services appropriately and not accidentally duplicate the client on the community services side. Okay, if that's not the correct match, you can always go back, which will take you back to the other screen where you can explore these other potential matches, or ultimately, if none of those are the right match, click create as new client. Okay, so this step is new. It is exciting because it's really linking together two systems that have a lot of data that we need to make sure that we are keeping in sync, and making sure that we are not duplicating efforts or duplicating records, which would be even worse. Okay, if for whatever reason you need to retry that match, maybe you said select as a new client, but then for some reason you realized, oh, this person does exist in community services, or you want to do the search again, you can see here where it says service point ID. You can actually click that and it will retry the match. So it'll go see maybe there's a new Fred Flintstone, and say, nope, still no Fred. They are still a new client. So you can always retry the match if you need to for whatever reason, but you do want to make sure to go through that process. So if you have volunteers or seasonal assistants who are going to be the first ones to pick up an application, you need to make sure that they are trained on that process and that they understand how to do that, because that is going to be very important for the success of the later data transfer, making sure that we are collecting and recording the information appropriately. Okay, so that's step one, the match process. Now that we've kind of got that out of the way, hopefully it's something that just takes a few seconds each time, but definitely very important. But now that we've passed that, now we want to talk about, okay, what is the actual kind of approval process? How do we take this pending application and actually get it into the system where we've got angels that are ready to adopt and the whole 9 yards, okay? So again, the status is pending. So I receive this, I do my match process, and then I'm going to look over this application. I'm going to make sure that their angel information looks good. Oftentimes, what you're doing when you're training your staff to help with the intake process is having them look over the angel information and make sure, like, okay, iPhone for my dad, no, that's not going to work. We don't want that to slip through. So you can always come in here and edit that by clicking the pencil, and edit pebbles, and we're going to say wishes for teddy bear. Make it something a little more reasonable, fix any spelling mistakes. That's often what you're doing when you're reviewing this application. You're going to look at the documents that they've uploaded and make sure that they qualify. Every location, every unit kind of has their own qualification rules. So that's going to be up to you to train your staff to know what you're looking for as far as qualification, but you're at least going to click it and make sure, okay, I'm going to open this identification. I'm going to say, hey, there's not actually even a picture here. This is not valid. So that may be a reason to return it back to the applicant and ask for a better copy of their photo ID, that kind of thing. Okay, so I'm here, I'm reviewing this, I can see all of the information. There is a history and comments section down here at the bottom where if I'm reviewing this, I might actually make a note, and I might say ID copy is bad, we need a new one. This keyboard is sticking. Returning to applicant. So that's just like a note. I've just noted this so that any of the other intake folks who look at this will know that there's been some progress on this, or there's been a note put here. You might say something like, I talked to the family and this is the reason why their application has an extra angel, or whatever notes you want to put there. It can be a helpful tool as you are working as a team to review all of these applications. So a few things I might do after having reviewed the application kind of for accuracy and all these things. A few things I might do. If I know for sure that they do not qualify for whatever reason, I can just straight out decline this application. So I can click decline. I would enter a reason for the decline, like just did not qualify. But you want to be, pretty specific with this, because what the system is going to do is send an email notification to the applicant to say they did not, their application has been declined for this reason, and it is going to say what the reason is. So you want to make sure that you are specific about what that is. So if you want to decline, I would click confirm decline. I don't want to decline this one. That application would be moved to a status of declined. Okay, so it would still be in the system, but it would be a status of declined. So if somebody calls you up and say, hey, what's going on with my application? You can actually go in here and look. You'll see that it was declined, who declined it, why they declined it, and actually be able to discuss that with them. There is also an option to undecline it if that were ever to happen. By either you declined it by mistake or a decision was made to reverse that decline decision, you would be able to do that. But another thing I might do, in this case, we have a good use case here, I might need to return this to the applicant. Maybe there's some missing information, or we don't you know, the copies that they uploaded weren't good and we need to retry those for whatever reason, I can click here, send notification, and I can say, please upload a better copy of your ID. Okay, something like that. I would submit this. I'm not going to, but I would submit this. And what that would do is send the email again to the client, to their email address, to say your application has been returned to you for the following reasons. Here's the steps we need you to take. They would see your note, upload a better copy. There would be a link to their application so they could go in there and do that. They can resubmit it, and then it comes back to you in the status of pending again. Okay, so it kind of puts it back out there in the status of return to applicants. We know we're waiting on them to do something. And then once they submit it again, it comes back as a status of pending. So it shows up again in your list to process. Okay, and of course you'd be able to see in the history, remember the history comment section, you'd be able to see the history of everything that's happened with this application, that it was returned and then ultimately resubmitted, and so on and so on. Okay, but if I am actually happy with this application and I want to move forward with it, before I can submit, you'll see, let me scroll back up to the top. You'll see that there is a submit button there, but it's grayed out and it says we require a distribution appointment before you can submit. So this is an important step. Before we can move this application on, you or the volunteer who is processing this application or whomever it is needs to actually go in here and schedule the appointment. So I'm going to go here under schedule the pickup. I'm going to click that pencil, and that takes me to my scheduler. So if you remember last week, we talked a lot about how to set up your distribution schedule and set up your available appointments. So this calendar is driven by that schedule that we set up. So then if I'm sitting here as a volunteer helping do this processing, I don't have to know what days are available or how many slots are available. I can just see it here. So I would just click on one of the highlighted cells. Sometimes one of the strategies is to tell them start with the earliest appointment, fill that slot, and then go to the next one, and then go to the next one, and then go to the next one, so that you fill from the top down. Some places are more about wanting to be convenient for the client. So say, okay, which of these days works for you, and then select one of those. But that's totally up to you. That's just an option. But the person who's scheduling the appointment is only able to schedule the appointments that you have set up as available. So it kind of makes it a no-brainer. And we talked about this last week, if you have a scenario where you have one intake site that could potentially have distribution appointments at 2 different distribution sites, then you would see those listed over here to the left. So you see Chicago Midwest Christmas Warehouse, that's already selected by default because it's the only one. But if you have a scenario where you have multiple distribution sites, this really happens in larger metro areas, you would also be able to switch which schedule you're looking at. Okay, but again, we only have one. So I'm going to go ahead and select one of the open cells. I'll take the first one. I'll click schedule. And now you can see that this family has been assigned a code, and my angel has been assigned a code as well. So again, going back to last week's training, we talked about setting up the distribution codes, how those are built, how those get structured. So if you want to refer back to that, you can. But this is given this unique code to this angel for this year. Okay, so I'm going to close that. You can also see that code up here under family code. And that way we can tell that this applicant has been given a distribution appointment. So now that they've been assigned an appointment, now we can submit. And now this application has been submitted for approval. Okay, so backing up, the application started as a draft. Then when the applicant submitted it, it became pending. Then we had the option to decline or return it to the applicant, but we chose to go ahead and submit it. So now the application is submitted. And that's typically the job of whoever is doing your main intake, whoever is your volunteers or seasonal assistants who are actually processing the majority of applications. They would be the ones to submit it. Then it goes through an approval process. The approval process is typically, it's what we call the intake supervisor. So someone who is maybe over several people who are doing your intake and have the kind of final say-so on whether this applicant is going to be approved in the program or not. So to do that, I can stay here where I am on this application, and I can click supervisor approval. I can click that here. More likely what you're going to be doing though is going to applicant records. You're going to filter for the ones that have been submitted, right? So this is if you're the supervisor. You're going to say, show me the ones that have been submitted, because those are the ones I need to process. I don't know if there will be any, probably not. Oh, there's one. So I say, okay, this is one I need to review and approve. So I'd be able to open that up, look at the details. Oh, and I will see that this one was never matched. So I need to go ahead and complete the match. You only have to do that once, but the first person to touch it should be the one that does it. But I'll go ahead and create as a new client. And now I can add my I can review it, of course, add any notes, and then add my supervisor approval. Okay, so now it has one level of approval. The final level of approval is what we call admin approval. We do find that in some cases, in fact, probably in most cases, you don't have a supervisor and an admin level approval. Maybe you just have the one. So there is a way to actually kind of skip supervisor approval and go straight to admin approval if you need to. And a good way to do that is here under, what is it? Application approval family. So this is family applications. And here I can see in one view, I might filter for those that have already been supervisor approved, and maybe those also that have been submitted. I can see all of the applications, and under each of those I can see their angels. So it just kind of, I'm not going into each one of them and reviewing in detail, maybe because I expect that my my intake staff have already done that, but I'm just glancing over to make sure that we have, you know, angel ages look fairly normal, and these kinds of things. And I can actually check the box at the top, which will check all of the records down below. And I can click at one time to admin approve all of them. So that's a really useful tool. I'm not sure everybody knows about that because we get questions every now and then, you know, that maybe the approval process takes too long. And so that's a quick way to do that. Especially if you're not using the supervisor and admin approve, you can just get right to admin approve. And that kind of overrides the need for the supervisor approval. Okay. The one important thing there that I missed saying, I apologize, is, in fact, let me go back and find one. This is a tip. This is a helpful tip that we've learned kind of over the years. Whoops. A lot of times what your intake staff will do, so they'll go in here, they'll do what they need to do, they'll create the match, they'll assign an appointment, they'll do all of this good stuff. I can't click it. They'll assign an appointment, they'll do the whole thing, and then they'll leave and go get a different application without submitting it. That submit is really important because that is what differentiates pending applications that we have already reviewed versus pending applications that are brand new that we haven't reviewed yet. So one really important tip if you're training your intake staff is to make sure that the final step is they have to click submit. Okay, that's the only way we're going to know that they actually did it. We're going to know, that's the only way we're going to know that they've actually approved everything. Okay, so that is important. But I will give you another tip. Under applicants, I'm going to go down here under bulk application update. So this is a way to update a whole bunch of application statuses at once. So for whatever reason, let's say you have one person on your intake staff who keeps forgetting to submit their applications, or who, I don't know, for whatever reason, you just need to update a whole bunch at the same time. I can come here and I can use my filter. It has a default filter on here, but let's say I want to grab all of the ones that are pending. So here are all my ones that are pending. If they already have a distribution code here, or a distribution site, then I know they've actually been reviewed. Somebody just forgot to submit them. Now that's not the case here. It looks like these truly are pending. So I might click them one by one and open them and take a look. But I can also use this checkbox up here, and I can submit them all at one time. Of course, I can only submit the ones that actually have a distribution appointment. So this particular scenario wouldn't work. But one other thing is, maybe the cutoff time has already happened. You've reached your limit of applicants, and we already know that anybody who's still pending is going to get declined. So I can come here at once, filter to everybody who's still pending, click decline, give my reason for decline. We'll say we have reached our limit for this year, or whatever nice thing you're going to say. And then it's going to send an email to each one of them to tell them your application has been declined and here's why. So this is a way where you can do lots of different things here. But this is a way where you can update a lot of application statuses at once. So it's going to be really useful. You're going to find yourself in a scenario where you need this at some point. There's a lot of different scenarios I could tell you, but you'll know them when you see them if you need to come back and update. And there is the undecline option there as well. I talked about that before. So if you have declined applications, you would be able to undecline them all at once. Okay, so helpful tip. I'm not sure everybody knows about that, and it's something we do get questions on. So make sure you know that. The correct scenario is that your intake staff submits them as you go, but just in case that happens, and for many other reasons, it's important to know about the bulk update option. Okay. All right, so now that we've talked about our application is admin approved. You will notice, or I'm back on my home screen here, once the application is admin approved, that means that the angels are now officially in the pool. Those angels are officially part of the program. They're able to be submitted out for adoption, and all those good things. The application must make it to a status of admin approved in order for those angels to be able to be processed, okay? Or to be able to be adopted and move on into the program. Because you're gonna have lots of applications that are either declined or draft and they never get submitted that have angels attached to them, and we don't want to include those angels because they haven't been vetted yet. We only want the ones that made it to the application approved status. So you'll see here we have now officially 5 angels in our pool. If I go here under angel records, I'll see each of those 5 angels. So these are the ones that are actually available for me to do something with. I can allocate them, I can adopt them, I can print the tags, I can do all kinds of things. But just know that they're not going to show up here under angel records until their family is admin approved. Okay? The family has to get fully admin approved. You will also see, similar to the bulk update that we just saw, you'll see these checkboxes here. These are what allow you to use the controls along the bottom of the page. So I'll select which angels I want to print the tags for example, and I would click print tags, and then it will create the tags. I can choose to include barcodes or not, and it will print those angel tags. We talked last week about the setting up your angel tag templates and making sure that you have the right cardstock available, and all those kinds of things. That is very important. You want to make sure to go back and take a look at that. If you haven't, now is the time to be making sure that the cardstock you have is going to print appropriately for the angels that you have. So you want to make sure to do that. Get your cardstock in hand, do some test printing, make sure that it's good to go, and make sure that you have your angel tag template settings all ready to go on your campaign admin. Okay, so that could be important in processing. So that actually covers what we wanted to cover today. I am reading that there may have been some moments where I cut out. So let me back up just a little bit. Oh yeah, okay. Okay, yeah, let me follow up on a couple of things I skipped over and or I might have been cut out on. Give me just 1 second. Okay, so I am going to back up to admin. I don't know if it cut out for everybody. I don't know where or when, so I'm just going to go over it one more time. I'm sorry if it's repetitive, but backing up to documents. So when we were setting the documents that were going to be required on the public application, in case you missed that, how to add documents, I'm just going to click here, add required document. The document types that are already exist would be there, or I can click add a new one. So let's say upload your SNAP account number. Sometimes that's used for qualifications. And then I would select which of the record types, applicant, angel, or household member, that I need to get that document for. And so we already saw on the application section how the applicant uploads that document, and this is what drives that. And then of course, if you want to remove it, you could just click the red X there, and then it won't ask for that document anymore. Okay, if you do that mid-season, you want to try not to. You want to try to get this all set up before you launch your applications, so that you're getting the same information for every applicant. But if mid-season, for some reason, you realize it's too much of a hassle to ask them for that particular document, you can always come here and remove it. Any applicants who had already uploaded that document, you would still have it, but going forward, any new applications would not require that document because you removed it. Okay. All right, so I'm going back now to applicant records, and let's open up our guy, Fred. Okay, so this application has already been approved. However, either during the review process or at some point after, so this has already been admin approved, but you may want to come around afterwards to include people in other seasonal programs. So we talked about the seasonal programs and how to set those up, but here's how we can actually designate, okay, this particular applicant has qualified or is interested in, or I want to tag for this particular program. So beyond them just being involved in Angel Tree, which we already know by their inclusion in this in this system, we may also be handing out food vouchers, and maybe I talked to this family and they're interested in Pathway of Hope. I know that's a big deal for the Central Territory specifically, but probably all across, where we need to flag families that are eligible or interested in the Pathway of Hope program. So this is going to allow us to not only record the fact that this family was part of Angel Tree, but that they also receive these additional services and are flagged as potential Pathway of Hope families. And that information also gets passed over to community services. So we need to make sure to select that information here. Otherwise, you're going to be having to go into community services, look up that person, and record a service for them there. It's easier to do it as part of the process because you're already doing Christmas work here, and it's just easier. So if you are training your volunteers and or your intake staff, and you know that you're going to be giving out additional services besides just the holiday toys and gifts, if you're going to be giving out Christmas baskets, meals, clothing, whatever, they need to check those boxes. And then whomever should be responsible for determining whether they're interested in Pathway of Hope, whether that's the intake staff, maybe that's the supervisor or the admin, later comes back and marks families with that. But if you check that box, that means that we are now going to send that information over to community services. I'm going to go ahead and check this other one as well that we set up, just a kind of a custom one, the Thanksgiving food distribution. And I'm going to show you, besides sending that services information over to SIMS, we can also see it in a report under admin. I'll go to seasonal programs, and here I can see, here's my one applicant who I've added. I haven't added any others, but you can see this one applicant also is participating in these particular seasonal programs. So I can use a filter and say, okay, show me everybody who is doing the Thanksgiving food distribution. And then that would give me a list that would filter down to only the ones who we've marked as Thanksgiving food distribution. So beyond just the services, which are very important and are really critical to the link between Angel Tree and community services, but beyond that, you could also use this for things as simple as, this family's interested in hearing more about church services, or this family's interested in summer camp for their kids next year. So you can kind of be flagging that as you go through the application process, and then 6 months later come back and run a report that says, hey, tell me all my Angel Tree families that were interested in summer camp so I can send something out to them. So that's another way you can kind of use seasonal programs. But most importantly, though, are those services that you see listed there with their service code and the Pathway of Hope question. So you want to make sure that that is definitely part of your application review process, part of your intake process, that you are making sure that you or your intake staff, whoever's doing this, is thinking through what other services might we need to record here, okay? Because that's going to be important going down. Okay, so I am just glancing through questions at this point, making sure that everybody got an answer. It looks like these people have already left the webinar, but it's a very good question, so I'm going to go ahead and address it because we do get it from time to time. When we are talking about the Angels Needs Wish Favorites, that section there, the question is it limited? If you're not using the drop down but you're using the text field, is there a limit to the number of characters they can enter there? And the answer is yes. And the main reason behind that is because when you go to print that on the Angel tags, if you can imagine what those look like, they're very limited on space. So we need to make sure that they are short enough answers that they will fit on those tags. So oftentimes people want us to expand that so I can let the family type a whole paragraph about what they wish for, but that makes it really difficult to print those neatly on the tags that you're using, unless you have some really special custom tag. So that is why those are limited, and that's a good question, which we get often. See, it looks like everybody's gotten an answer so far.
Hi, Patricia. This is Eric.
Hey, Eric.
Quick question. Can we run through the process for singles or families that have no angels and how that application process would work?
Yeah, we definitely can do that, but I will go ahead and say we're making some tweaks to that at the moment to make that a little more straightforward. So I think it's probably going to be best if we hold off on that. And then within the week, we should have some information to send out about how to do that. There are ways to do it, and people have been doing it for years now, but we've realized that there needs to be a little bit of a smoother path towards that. So I'm going to hold off on that for the moment, and we will definitely send out some information about that here within a week or so.
Sounds good.
Yeah, okay, so getting to some questions that don't have answers yet. Okay, so a good question about the consent signature. If you're doing intake interviews rather than online consent, what you can do is actually print out the application for them to sign. So let me show you how to do that. Actually, let me back up and let me say, if you are doing in-person intake, you're not doing online applications, the way to do that is to go here under applicants, click new applicant. This is a family versus a special care. Choose the intake site, and it will walk us through the intake form. I'm not going to fill it out here, but in case you weren't aware, that is how you actually enter a new applicant directly into the system without them going online to do it themselves. Okay, so it's practically the same thing. The form just looks a little easier. It's easier for data entry, but it's practically the same thing. So they would enter. You would enter the new applicant here. Of course, they'll end up showing up here on applicant records, just like anybody would. And then if I want them to sign it, I would actually need to print that out. So there's a print icon in the upper right corner there. I would print that out, and it actually has a signature line for them. So you would print that out and just keep that on file in your office. So we don't do digital signatures if you're doing an interview style. You would need to print that out and have them sign that. Okay, hopefully that answers that question. Yeah, definitely a few questions here about the families with no children. So look for information on that coming out here really soon. I think that's going to be a really helpful update for you guys this year. And then questions about duplicates, duplicate families and kind of duplicate angels. There are a few different ways that we're handling that now. The search for duplicates, and then there's some additional reporting that we are working to put in place that's been requested. So one really helpful thing about this client match that we're doing is when you match a client in Sims, not only are we looking to see if that client already exists over there, but we're also looking to see if someone has already matched this client this year. So that will tell you, hey, this same family matched, a week ago at another core location, or yesterday at our core location, and you can see that someone's trying to use the same family information twice. So that's one thing. First of all, it'll give you the message here. It'll say this family's already been matched. This looks like a duplicate. And then it tells you the ID of the other application that looks the same. And then it would be up to you at that point to go look at both of them, determine if they truly are duplicates. If so, you would need to delete one or two, or the extras, or deal with it in whatever way you think is appropriate. But it will warn you that this has already been matched and it looks like this is a duplicate. Another thing we're putting in place to help on top of that is to give an admin level report that actually shows you kind of in real time things that are potential duplicates, so that you can research them. So that's kind of a new feature and a bigger ask. So it's going to take us a little bit more time to get that in place, but I think it'll be really helpful in kind of going back and determining. There's oftentimes what can we do at the point of entry to prevent the duplicate, and that's kind of what we've focused on so far. And now what we're looking at is another layer on top of that is what can we do after all the data has been entered to review it en masse and spot any potential duplicates or other anomalies. So that's kind of what we're working on. So definitely look out for more information about that coming up soon. And while I'm mentioning it, because I've said this twice now, more information coming soon. One thing you really want to look out for, especially this year, is if you see in the upper, in the menu area at the top here, it says announcements. This is where we would put any information like that. So if you see that red circle that says 1, that means there's an announcement here that you haven't read yet that is probably important to you. So if you see that, make sure to look there. This is just a test one that we're doing in our test area, but this one will tell you any new features that we push or any big updates that you need to be aware of. You would see those there. So keep an eye on that. When you log into the system and you see a big red circle over there saying there's an announcement, it's a news flash that you probably want to go see. So this is an extra plug for that since I've mentioned it twice. If a digital signature is possible for online application, how come it can't be possible for the interview? Really just because of the device. That would mean the person has to walk around your computer and sign with their sign with their hand or something like that. There's different options out there for plugins where you can pass them a pad to sign off on, but we just haven't gone that route yet because most locations don't have something like that. It may be something we could do in the future, but so I appreciate you bringing it up. But as far as in-person interviews right now, it would be the printed application. I think we've answered all of the questions. If I can answer them, like I said, we'll be sending out some more information. If your question was more around families without angels or senior angels, we'll be sending out some more info. Keep an eye on your announcements for that info coming soon. So if you have any other questions, go ahead and throw them up there. Otherwise, we're getting to the end here, so I don't want to leave anybody out. But hopefully what we've done today is kind of walked you through making sure your application setup is done. That's a very important part of all of this. You need to make sure that that's set up before you launch your online applications, making sure you've set up your application settings and your required documents. So if you haven't done that yet, go ahead and get in there. If your campaign's already open, go ahead and get in there and set that up. And then hopefully kind of getting your head around the approval process and what part your volunteers or your seasonal assistants or your supervisors or admins may play in all of that processing. So certainly if you have questions, feel free to reach out to us. And then we will be pushing information as we have new updates And we shouldn't have too many more for this year, really just a couple, so that the system's kind of set and ready to go. And by beginning of September, it will be in the state that it's going to be for the rest of the season, so you can feel comfortable that you understand the system and know how it's going to be used. So yeah, I don't see any other questions coming in, so we'll go ahead and wrap it up a little early then for today. Again, if you have questions, feel free to reach out to our support. If you didn't know, I'll go ahead and say now, under resources in the menu here, you do have FAQs. So we looked at some of those earlier. You can go to the FAQ library and actually search. There's a search box here at the top where you can search for a specific topic. So I searched earlier for online applications, and a lot of the information that we've covered is there. So feel free to look through there if you're needing help. There is a library of our training videos available as well that'll take you out to our YouTube channel that has lots of hours of training videos, but they're broken down into specific sections. So if you want to learn more about printing angel tags or learn more about allocating angels and these kinds of things, you can go there to find that. And then if all else fails and you really need to just ask us a question, you can click email us, and that will open up a prompt to email our support team, which we will try to get back to you as quickly as possible. So we're going to go ahead and end it there for today then. I appreciate you all being here and look forward to a really successful angel tree season. I think we've got a lot of cool stuff in place this year, and we look forward to hearing about your success. But have a great day.